UFOs, monsters, mysteries. You're listening to Talking Weird. And now, from a cabin deep in the Northwoods, your hosts, Dr. Dean Bertram and Jen Durrell.
Hey, baby.
Hey. How are you, baby?
Good. Can you hear the thunder in the background? I just got a massive belt above me.
No, I think you're good. I don't hear it.
My mic's good then if it's cutting that out. Yeah, a big storm's just rolled into the North Woods. Like, it is belting down here now, and there's thunder and lightning.
I wish we got some rain.
Oh, you did?
I wish.
Oh, okay. What'd you get up to today?
Oh, just chores, but it's super hot outside.
Yeah, it was hot and muggy here as well. I was out building a fence around my ever-growing pumpkin patch, which is just taking over my vegetable garden, and I need to keep the chickens and the deers out today. So I'm no handyman, as you know, but I'll have a crack at something. So I'm pounding these fence poles in before I put the poultry wire around the bit that I was fencing. And Chloe, my daughter, was with me, and I'm belting my 5-year-old daughter, and I'm belting this stake into the ground. And she said, "That's a good wood knock." And I thought, that's too many episodes of Finding Bigfoot that we've watched together or something. But yeah, so that was pretty funny that she associated the pounding noise with Sasquatches, or trying to summon Sasquatches from the deep woods. Who knows? There's reports like that around here. So that's about the excitement level of my day. I'm excited though about tonight's guest. He's the founder and lead investigator of the St. Louis, Missouri-based paranormal investigation group, Minds IPI. He has helped clients understand and deal with their personal paranormal experiences for over a decade. Growing up in a 100-year-old haunted house and having a near-death experience as a young man introduced him to the paranormal. Now he is a researcher and member of Lon Strickler's Fortean research team for Phantoms and Monsters. He's also a producer and community manager for the paranormal YouTube channel Beyond Explanation, co-producing shows with Bill Fuller, such as Amy Boo's Wild Boo Yonder, the Catskills Appalachian Research Collectives from Behind Tall Trees, Jack Carey's Paranormal Planet, and Arcane Radio with Lon Strickler. Our guest is also the forensic sketch artist for the North American Dogmen Project, and is a sketch artist for paranormal sightings of other creatures and experiences. He has been an active field researcher for everything from spirits and otherworldly entities to UFOs, EBEs, Bigfoot, and various other cryptids. So I'm absolutely delighted to welcome tonight's guest, Vincent Richardson. Greetings.
Hey.
Hello, how are you?
Man, I'm good. I'm so excited to have you on. I always watch so many of the shows you produce and, chat occasionally to you in those chats that you moderate in the show. So it's nice to have you here on.
I'm excited to see you face to face on this side of the camera.
Yeah.
It's great, man. It's great. So this is normally a Jen question, but I think I'm going to ask it because,
go for it.
Well, we love to know how people enter this weird universe that we all co-inhabit. So what originally drew you into the paranormal? I know I mentioned a few things in the intro, but maybe you can fill us in a little bit more.
Sure. Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. Yeah. I was fortunate or unfortunate enough, depends on how you look at that. I was born into the paranormal, and I grew up in a 100-year-old house, and that house happened to be haunted. And I actually, I'm in that house right now.
Oh,
wow!
You're still in it.
Yep, still live here. And when I was a young man, I contracted a spinal meningitis, and I spent a month in a coma and had a near-death experience. And after that, it just kind of opened me up to the world of the paranormal.
Gosh. Do you still encounter and experience things in the home that you live in?
We do. When I was a little boy, I actually had a make-believe friend that was a little bit more than make-believe. And it was this little blonde girl, and she's still seen here in the house every once in a while.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, this house is very active. We've actually taken steps recently to calm the activity down.
Do you mind if I ask you what procedures you did? This is more up Jen's alley again, but
Sure. No problem. I started with just doing your ritual Christian prayer, holy water, salt barrier, that kind of thing. And unfortunately, it wasn't as effective as I would have liked it. So Lon Strickler gave me some tips and tricks, and I used this tar water. And that has actually almost cured the whole issue. Now, we've had some moments where I feel like this entity that we were having issue with kind of lash out at us. But for the most part, things have been a lot better lately. Thanks to the tar water and some affirmations.
Yeah. Have you done
I'm
research?
a strong believer in those. Sorry?
Have you done research on the property to find out?
Yeah, we researched the property. Apparently, there's an old bar in the basement, and it was during the Prohibition time, and I think there was gambling and drinking and whatnot down there.
Yeah.
It was kind of a local hoo-ha. So who knows what happened down there? I mean, there could have been a plethora of things that could have happened back then. We're not sure. There is a weird thing in the backyard that we were kind of looking into. There is a cement square back there that looks to be a turn-of-the-century grave, but we're not sure about it. I always wondered if that little girl was maybe buried on the property.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gosh, that's interesting.
Heavy, huh?
Yeah, no.
Yeah, no. Well, I mean, yeah, you know, when you live in the house, it doesn't seem like that big of a deal. I mean, I hate to sound like that, but I mean, you get used to it, you know, and you take precautions against it, and that's when you live in a situation like that, it's hard not to get involved with the paranormal and seek answers.
Oh,
you know?
No, I bet. One of our most regular listeners, Joe Fox, asked, have you tried to help the girl to the light?
You know, we haven't done a spirit rescue with her yet. That is something I've considered doing in the future, definitely before we move, because she's never been any issue. There's actually been another man sighted in the house too. Never had any issue with him. Some people did a remote view of our place for me, and they did find a shadow creature, and that was the entity I was referring to earlier.
Okay.
Gotcha.
So do you know how many spirits are actually there? I mean, have you
There
counted?
seemed to be 3. They said they crossed one, an old woman that died in the house, and I believe that was Mrs. Von Dami. She was the owner previous, and she actually passed away in the living room. Yeah. Strange, huh? Old houses.
Yeah, I know they're great though. I love them.
You guys are both from Missouri, the Show Me State, so you both probably need to have some kind of evidence front and center to believe something.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. Yeah, that is true.
So how'd you get involved with Lon Strickler, Vincent? What was the original
quite by luck. I was a huge fan of his, and followed Arcane Radio since it started. And well, when they came back to YouTube on the Beyond Explanation channel, before I started working for Beyond Explanation, I was just a fan, and basically stalked him in the chat rooms and wouldn't leave him alone. So Now I help him out and vet his cases here in Missouri and St. Louis and around here.
What are some of the top cryptid type things in Missouri?
Well, of course, we have Momo, right? Momo the monster, which is like a Sasquatch type creature, but supposedly it has 3 fingers and 3 toes, and kind of more bushier than normal Sasquatches, if there is such a thing. And here in the Ozarks, we're said to have a white Bigfoot of the smaller variety that could be cave beings of some sort. We've got all sorts of stuff in Missouri. Missouri is a weird place.
You know, the 3-track thing always interests me. There seems to be those 3-toe things seem to appear for some reason more in the South. Is that accurate?
Yeah,
I consider Missouri.
Yeah.
I consider Missouri the South. Having said that, I know it's kind of Midwest, but it's,
Sure, but yeah, that in Florida and other reports, they seem to have that. That could be, I believe, maybe due to inbreeding. Small populations, you would assume there'd be inbreeding, and one of the first things to happen is physical deformity of the fingers, toes, face. You get some pretty horrific creatures out there because of that.
Yeah, that's. I know also the. Are you familiar with the show Hellier, the Newkirk show Hellier?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I know the goblin tracks in that show were 3-toed as well, if I recall.
Yeah.
I often wonder if there's some cross phenomenon. You know what I mean? That it might manifest here as a goblin and here as a momo, or
Sure, absolutely. Could be some sort of fae-like creature, some shape-shifting ultra-terrestrial.
It's that 3-toe track thing's always very weird. Did you have any? We have some of your wonderful sketches here. Was one of the sketches of either the Missouri monster or of
I don't have any Momo drawings. No, I do have a couple Sasquatch drawings on there, but no Momo. Haven't come across him myself yet.
Do you want to pop up one of Vincent's Sasquatch drawings for us to?
Sure. There's one that has writing on it. I can tell you a little story about that one. It's kind of interesting.
Bring up the writing one.
I think I have that. I'm just trying to find where I stuck it.
While you're looking at that, the thunder just rolled in again. It's an ominous night to be talking about.
It's perfect.
Bigfoot. Something might be knocking on my cabin window if I'm not careful soon. This is the night monster.
Where are you located, Dean?
I'm in the North Woods in Wisconsin. Which is also a weird state. We were talking about how strange Missouri is, which I totally agree with. But Wisconsin's one of those states which is just loaded with everything.
A lot of upright canine sightings up there.
Yeah, you're right. The Beast of Bray Road. There was, in fact, in the town closest to where I am, which I'm not really in the town, but the whole area is really called the town. But in one of Linda Godfrey's many werewolf and dogman books, it talks about a big 1950s wolf sighting here, and it wasn't an upright one. It was more like an American werewolf in London type werewolf, an excessively large, wolf type, quadruped running around terrorizing farmers. So yeah, there's all kinds of. There was a Bigfoot sighting up the road from me. Also, that's in another one of Linda Godfrey's books. Actually, you don't have to go very far in a Linda Godfrey book to find something within stone's throw distance of where I am here in the North Woods. That's for sure.
Scary.
Yeah, it is, but it's kind of cool as well. I like that idea of, when you hear something outside in the woods at night. Is it a deer or is it?
Do you ever go out there looking around?
I mean, I go out into my woods to cut firewood and to do things like that, but I haven't been out actually squatching or out, looking for any other type of cryptid. It would be interesting though. I think it'd be It'd be intriguing to do. I know that the people around here, I bumped into a guy who had like those magnet type stickers on the side of his truck in a local Walmart. I can't remember what it was. It was something like Sasquatch expeditions or something, you know. And I waited for him. I didn't have to wait very long. He came out about 5 minutes after I was there. That's my thunder. Wow, that's cool. Can you tell us a story about?
I thought that was an effect that when you put the picture up, it was like,
out here now.
It took me a minute to find it. I knew I had it, but
yeah, there he is. There he is. Yeah, 7 and 8 foot tall, 700 plus pound. Okay, so this gentleman, all right, in Bloomington, Indiana, was hunting in his tree stand, and he was looking through his scope. And over in a patch of trees, he saw a Sasquatch just sitting there. And he watched him for quite a while. And eventually, a deer walked right up. He was like using these trees as a blind. And that's when that Sasquatch popped up into action and punched the deer right in the chest. Grabbed him by the back legs like a baseball bat and beat him against the tree. Put him underneath his arm. Looked back at the guy and then walked away.
Good grief.
I know. And that is a sketch of what he said that fellow looked like. No, I wouldn't want to see that out in the woods.
No, that's very cool. So did you when you do a sketch like this, do you confer with the witness, for example? Like, do you?
Yeah. This was during a live session, actually. Okay. Yeah, so he was right there telling the story, and by the end of the story I've got that. Usually most of my sketches are about 10-15 minute sketches, and then I just kind of maybe I'll detail them in later, but usually not.
Oh, no, that's great. I mean, it is, you're right, it's certainly something you wouldn't want to run into back in the woods. It interests me how many, I mean, maybe it's because people are out in the woods, so like hunters, so they're more likely to bump into things. But there seems to be it seems to be one of the activities that, I don't know if it draws things in or it brings us closer or there's some more metaphysical meaning, but there certainly seem to be a lot of stories about hunters who encounter Sasquatches or who disappear, like the David Paulides missing 411 hunters, or people. They're dangerous.
They are dangerous animals. I mean, they are. If you go into any Native American lore or First Nations people lore, the first thing they'll tell you is these guys are dangerous. They kidnap children and women and children, and they're never seen again. They're said to be cannibalistic, and I know a lot of people have their feelings, like they want to think that Harry and the Hendersons out there, and we can all be friends. But the data suggests that there are missing people in our own backyard here. And I would assume some of those would have to be due to that. I wouldn't blame Sasquatch in particular for all of it. You know.
No, I think you're right. Yeah. It's interesting that a lot of people in the UFO community, all the way back to Peter Byrne and John Green, almost went out of their way to want to prove that they were just, shy but inquisitive, ape men or man apes or North American apes or whatever, depending whether you thought it was more of a relic or more of an ape. But the reality is, you're right. Native American lore is absolutely loaded with kidnap and attack stories, and certainly even the modern Bigfoot accounts. You don't have to look very far to find a story about a Bigfoot trying to break into a house, or a Bigfoot attacking a car, or a Bigfoot, attacking a hunter. Or these stories they're far more ubiquitous than I think a lot of people in the Bigfoot community want to admit.
Right. I mean, these are huge, strong apex predators. Some of them could be relic hominids of some sort, or some wood ape, but some of these are supernatural. You can't explain disappearing and things like that. I mean, I think there's lots of different kind of things going on out there. It's not just one kind of Sasquatch.
Yeah, we had Joshua Kuchin on a couple of weeks back, and obviously his 2-volume series he did with Timothy Renner, Where the Footprints End, it's fairly difficult to read those books and look at those comparisons between Bigfoot lore and fairy faith and UFO stories and old witch lore and whatever else, and not to say there seems to be a common thread through some of these. There's
overlapping evidence.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can't ignore that. I mean, especially the Fae stories with the extraterrestrial abductions. I mean, this has been going on for a long time. And I mean, under what cover that they're projecting at the time, be it fairies or now the sci-fi gray aliens, there you have it.
Yeah, I think that is just the latest manifestation. The grays, the abducting gray extraterrestrials, seems to be the latest manifestation, as you mentioned, of something far older that seems to have been with us almost throughout our recorded histories of myth cycles and everything else. Now, since you were talking about Bigfoot, tell us, I know that you're a forensic sketch artist for the North American Dogman. Is it group? North American Dogman Project. There you go. And Mothman 46 is a regular listener as well. Just made the point that Stan Gordon's done an awful lot of research on
Stan Gordon's fantastic
and UFO tandem sightings. Yeah, indeed he is.
Absolutely.
But can you tell us a little bit about, before I'll ask you a little bit about your work with the Dogman organization in a minute, but can you tell us a little bit how you think that ties in? I know some people like to think the Dogman is another type of cryptid, and there's also a more esoteric, suggestion of what it might be. Can you let us know what your take is on
my take? And this is just my take, is I don't think those upright canines evolved here on the planet, or Sasquatch for that matter. I believe that most cryptids were created in antiquity by extraterrestrials for whatever purpose, and now we just see the remains of those things from thousands and thousands of years ago. That's what's left here, is we have those now. And I think that's what we're seeing, these upright canines. I think that's what that is mostly. Maybe the government is doing something with them. I don't know. There seems to be a lot of government. They're involved with Bigfoot. They're involved with all of this. They have their bases close to these ley line sites, and you see UFO sites around. They know what's going on. they know.
I know Johnny and Elijah Henderson were doing quite a bit of work recently on the Beast of LBL, and the recent witness who came forward and claimed to actually have been there with the famous massacre that took place supposedly between a couple of dogmen attacking a family in an RV back in the 70s or early 80s.
Sure, the LBL massacre.
Yeah. I know they suggested that there was some kind of government involvement there, and they were potentially looking into trying to work out what agency or what people were involved in that.
Well, in that particular story, the so-called survivor was picked up within minutes of the whole thing, and the guy just drove him back to the place. I mean, the whole story is just doesn't add up personally.
Yeah, it's certainly strange.
Are you reading one?
Yeah, I'm just seeing Mothman 46. I don't often engage, but both Mothman 46 and, for example, Joe Fox always have interesting things. Now, Jody Cook's part of that Dogman organization that you're a part of. Is that right too, or?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. He is the founder lead of the whole organization.
Yeah, Mothman 46 was saying that Jody Cook has a story of armored dogmen being part of some type of CIA black ops operation or something, I believe.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Was the message that he said.
And that's a trip. Yeah.
Jeez, it sounds like
outfitting these beasts with armor and giving them weapons, training them, and sending them in, and it's cooperative black ops project. I don't I mean, I don't know. Sure.
Yeah.
No, I know very little. I mean, I shouldn't say I know very little. I know very little about some of those more way out there, I suppose I would think of, dogman stories. I'm certainly cognizant of an ongoing history of lycanthropy or the appearance of man-like wolves throughout history from ancient times until today. And those stories fascinate me, that there seem to be this ongoing tale of those type of creatures, but the actual more physical interpretation, I guess, of them being something like a CIA black ops project or that stuff is I know far less about, to be honest. So how did you get involved with that organization, Vincent?
Through my friend Nick Valente. He runs Region 3 for the NADP.
Okay.
And so we just he kind of brought me on board, and I've been on board ever since.
And you're a forensic artist for the Dogman Project, right? Like you actually sometimes do, I suppose, witness drawings of witness descriptions.
Right. So the witness will get with me, and we'll sketch out, their whole encounter. We want to get an idea of, I mean, since we're not getting physical pictures or videos of these, we want to get a good idea of what's actually out there. We take the similarities, and then from those we can start to really put together what's out there.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a picture of a dogman or wolfman type creature there that Vincent might have sent through, Jen? You can bring up. We can have a chat about.
There's a couple in there.
Yeah.
Let's have a look at a couple of them. It seems to me almost that talk about these type of creatures fell off for a long time. Like, I know people have come.
It does seem like they're being seen a lot more lately.
Yeah, it seems like since Linda Godfrey wrote that book, the initial Beast of Bray Road book, it seems like a lot more people have come forward with stories, and it's almost like they seem to be reported almost as much as Sasquatches do these days. It's strange.
Now see that's a hyena type. There's different types of these dogmen that they're seeing out there.
Is there a story behind that one that you can tell us in particular? Or?
Not that one in particular. No, that one is more of an.
I can see it's
compilation.
I've heard people describe them like hyenas as well. There's one.
Yeah, now that's from a report. The reason I only have the face is that's what he saw in his window, and that's all he got to see of it beside it running off. How would you like to see that in your window?
There's quite a lot of
7
stories.
feet off the ground window.
Uh-huh. I was about to say I've read quite a few stories about dogmen attacking houses or looking in at windows and tapping on windows and things like that.
Sure, and they're in trees. Yeah, people see them in trees, like apes. I mean, a lot of times when we go out there, we're looking up. A little tip: if you guys are going to go out there, look up. Keep a camera on behind you.
When you guys go out looking for these things, are you armed? I mean, they look pretty serious.
Well, absolutely. Yeah, no, you don't want to go out there with bubble gum. I don't know.
I wouldn't even go into my back 40 without a handgun. And it's not because I'm necessarily scared of, it's not necessarily because I think there are dogmen out there, but there are
anything could be out there.
Coyote,
sure, right.
Bobcat.
Depending where you're at. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
If there's any of these you want to stop, Jen, if Vincent, if you want to say stop this and I'll tell you the story, just let Jen know.
I'm just kind of flipping through.
Yeah, no, they're all very cool.
That were
that was a sighting where someone was actually assaulted knocked down by one of these things and starting to be drug away, and then he passed out. He saw a UFO. He thinks he was abducted.
Huh.
Ah,
Yeah,
that's interesting.
That is interesting.
So there's a connection right there.
Mm-hmm. Here's another one. Hyena.
Now, yeah, that was a from a sighting. Yeah. That one, I believe, was in Arizona. Yeah.
Do you think there's a difference in, let's just for a moment, because I'll be honest, my take is always a Keelian type take, like these things might all be manifestations of something else.
Sure.
But I do notice, and I'm interested in your take on this, I've noticed that while there is a commonality in the fact that they're these bipedal canid type creatures, there is quite a difference, and this one's a classic example, which we were just saying, one that looks more like a hyena, and there was one a few images back which I've also heard people talk about. It almost looks more like an Alsatian or a wolf just standing up with its paws out, you know. There seems to be a considerable difference within the description of these creatures, more so I think even than in descriptions of Sasquatches, to be honest.
Sure. Yeah, there's more variations of it. Some have canine back legs. Some reported to have more of the human Sasquatch type leg, hyena type. You got the ones that look like timber wolves that are more quadruped. There's a whole.
Do you think what do you think? You said you thought they might have been the result of an extraterrestrial type breeding program or some extraterrestrial experimentation back in the day. Do you think then all of these are different type species, or do you think, well, this type might be physical and this type might be supernatural, or do you have a type of take there?
See, there might be several types like that. So I do think there are more of a supernatural take, just the same way as the Sasquatches we were talking about earlier. I think some of those are more supernatural, maybe fourth dimensional beings. And the same goes with the Dogman. Some of these things are purely dark entities. I mean, demonic entities. These upright canine entities that look like smoke and ink manifested into a werewolf out of a Ouija board. And you know, what's that? That's not the same thing we're seeing out here. That's leaving, you know, scat and stuff behind. I mean, these things are here one moment and gone another. And they're not sleeping here, eating here, drinking here.
That's interesting. You mentioned scat. So I'm guessing that is one of the types of physical evidence that you guys have collected. What other type of physical evidence, if any, is there of
Dogman?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, hair, saliva, blood. Yeah, urine. You know, anything like anything else. The NADP's looking for it and trying to collect it, and there are genome products out there that we're sending them in and getting them analyzed.
I know there's a number of Wolfman type apparitions inside of homes as well. I know there was one, I think, with the relics. It's a famous weird case that I think there's been a book or two on, and Fortean Times did a couple of pieces on, called the Hexham Heads. I think some kids in the UK uncovered these weird artifacts in their garden or on a local hillside or something, and it ended up in the hands of an archaeologist or an anthropologist, and supposedly her house began to be victim of a number of manifestations, I guess. And one of those things, I think, was the manifestation of a giant wolf type creature. And I know in Linda Godfrey's books there's a number of stories of people encountering, just in the middle of the night or something, or, you know, something inside their house in a hallway or something, just manifesting and then, you know, just disappearing again. So
that doesn't surprise me. A lot of these things could be tulpas. They could be thought forms. These people obsessively watching their Dogman radio at night could be manifesting these things into their house. You know what I mean? That could be partially the rise of sightings. We could be producing these things on accident.
I think that's a very good point, actually, because I think
Sure.
I just wonder why there was. I talked to Ken Gerhardt about it once as well, just in private correspondence, and he was like, "Yeah, I was very unaware of any of these kind of reports much before, the 80s going into the 90s. These things just didn't seem to be a part of that type of cryptid story that was coming through. But ever since that Linda Godfrey book, and ever since there was that I think it was an April Fool's Day prank. Remember, there was the guy who recorded the song Legend or something about how this werewolf came, or this dogman creature appeared every 7 years in Michigan somewhere. And I think they both came aroundish the same time, Godfrey's book and that story. And then all of a sudden, it just seemed like there were dogmen everywhere, So
how many ancient religions have these dog-headed deities? These ancient deities that they worshipped. I mean, who's saying these things aren't laying dormant? And then you got enough people thinking about them, and that's a form of worship right there. These things could be popping back into this reality. I think a lot has to do with where we're at right now in time or space. I think a lot of the ancients told about this time where the veil was thin last time, and we're there again. We are just now seeing it, and that's the reality that we're in right now.
Didn't they have those types on like Egyptian walls where they have the dog face or
right?
Yeah.
So absolutely.
I know even biblically there's talk about the end times it being as it was in the days of Noah, and some people have taken that to mean that was a time where there was more of this type of combination of supernatural beings and natural beings.
Absolutely.
So you're right, there is a cross-cultural idea perhaps that you can move into a period in the latter days where you'll start seeing more non-human creatures.
All of these stories keep getting repeated in different places, different times. It's because it's our story, and we're just remembering our story. It's kind of sad. We more than likely were at some sort of technological apex before and messed it all up, and here we are again. Round 2, 3, 4, who knows?
Yeah, who does know? A listener just commented, Mothman 46, something that it is true. John Keel did say that if you, and I think it's in the Mothman Prophecies movie as well, that wonderful film by Mark Pellington, the quote that by the Alexander Leak character in that, but it is based on something Keel said, that they notice if you notice them, these things. So that goes to your point of when you start paying them attention. And I think that travels even beyond just talking about dogmen. I wonder how many of these things, period. Like, Jen's obviously, So tell us a little bit about some of your stuff, Jen, when it comes to acknowledging this and what happens.
Well, that's just with anything that you don't understand or that you might think you see. Same with entities or hearing things, and then all of a sudden you just kind of ask questions, and then they're like, wait a minute, they could be, they're talking to me. So then, there's more of an attraction, and then they want to interact with you more because they know you can either sense them or see them or
ghost hunters need to beware. You guys are manifesting your trouble.
Oh yeah.
You guys really, how many cases I've been to where it's been some person obsessed with ghosts and ghost shows and ghost books, and they're like, my house is haunted. Yeah, your house is haunted.
You're making it worse.
Stop going to asylums. Stop going to old cemeteries at 3:00 in the morning, and don't do that.
Yeah,
We'll follow you.
I had a friend who was involved.
They will follow you.
I had a friend who was involved in the OTO, and something he always said was, be careful. You don't open any doorways that you can't close. And I think sometimes that might be done almost consciously by occultists trying to open things, but it might be done unconsciously by people who do watch too many ghost shows and obsess on it and go ghost hunting, or people who read too many UFO books. I remember John Keel, speaking of Keel again, giving people advice, and he said it worked, was, go home and just burn all that UFO and occult stuff you've got and stop thinking about it. And that'll get rid of them. And I think that's probably pretty good advice for anybody who finds that they're assaulted by, this type of external attack.
Think about the Bigfoot community on that, the obsession, the Sasquatch obsession. I mean, ruins lives. I'm telling you. Sure does. I've seen it.
Really? Is there a tale you can tell without telling us any names?
Oh, without saying any names.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, people, like, for instance, will have a sighting, and just like anybody, that makes you want to know more about it.
Curiosity.
But some people in the cryptid community go a little bit too far with that, and then they become obsessed, and then they're in their backyard saying everything has eyes and looking at them.
Yeah, there's a lot.
They become obsessed with it, and it's can ruin their lives.
There's a lot of that wishful thinking with these things as well. Like we always see it on Bigfoot groups on Facebook, and like people posting some picture of a blurry tree, and they've got to put the circle around what's clearly just a couple of leaves out of focus, but they're trying to tell me it's the eyes of the Bigfoot or something. And it's like,
right.
You really want to see these things, goodness gracious.
Yeah, that's the thing, is they want to so bad to see it again. They want to so bad to see it again that they see it everywhere.
That's a good question. I was going to ask you. I mentioned it before, and I was going to ask you before again from Mothman 46. He said, "Can we get your take, Vincent, on missing 411?"
Yeah, I do think that's a combination of things. Some of the weirder possibilities of the weirder cases. Again, a lot of what our government does when we have these strange places, okay? When they find out that there's some weird area, they will go slap a park on it, slap a base on it, and that's what we see. Now, people go into these parks. Some of these things are maybe in the wrong place at the wrong time. A portal just opens up and pop, they're gone. Simple like that. Some of these other places, I think there's a more nefarious thing going on. I mean, look at the people that are disappearing in the job sets and stuff like that. That's very strange. It's very strange. You might wonder where these people are going and for what end. I mean, when the bodies don't come back, where are they going?
Yeah, it almost seems like then it becomes almost like there's some, for lack of a better term, cosmic conspiracy to try to get certain people or something. You're right when it comes to the disappearance of scientists or the disappearances of a certain age group or a certain subset of the population. That's when it does seem very strange. And I mean,
that's what they're looking for at that time period. And
maybe it makes me think of some of Charles Fort's, kind of, he'd often throw away an idea. That's what I love about Fort. A lot of people who are Fortians take it all very seriously, and Charles Fort would have this idea in this book, and then 2 chapters later he'd throw out this idea, or in the next book he'd throw out that idea. But of course, one of his most famous ideas was that we were property on this earth. Something actually owned us. And then you've got to think, you wonder if it's like a
feels right, doesn't it?
Yeah, like a game reserve. Yeah, I know. It gets the little tingles going. It's like a game reserve. It's like I have deer on my property, and you can only shoot certain deer.
Right.
you can, like, there's years where you can only shoot bucks, and you can only do it at a certain time, and there tends to be, well, you don't shoot a buck this age, you only shoot a buck this or this size, and if you shoot a doe, you don't shoot a doe with children, or there are these kind of rules and etiquette. There are also laws, but there's things which hunters tend to abide by usually when they go out hunting. And then when you hear about subsets of people being taken, whether it's because they're intellectually challenged, or because they're particularly bright, or because they have whatever, it makes you start to think, I wonder if there is some what's going on. Is it like a game park, and you can only take this type of person at the moment? Gosh, who knows?
And who's filling their card? Who, is it the reptilians? Is it the insectoids? Is it, I don't know.
Yeah, Mothman's always got something interesting to say.
Yeah, he was interesting, saying that some strange areas were made into parks and some were flooded to make lakes. It is interesting how.
Now, see, how many of these parks have things like the Devil's Lake, or like these things that once upon a time, when we first went in there, the Native Americans were like, "Don't go over there. That's not a good place to go." And so we call it this or that. So there's the Devil's Den. Stay out of there. Now it's the park. Let's go take the kids out to the park.
Exactly. And Pilates talks about. Pilates talks about that as well, right? The devil's in the detail. Is that there's these places which are, and Keel talked about it in a name game. Like there are certain names, and and they're not always even mysterious, but sometimes they definitely are. Sometimes it's like, as you said, Devil's Peak or Devil's Lake or Devil's Mount. There seems to be a clear warning, but there is something, which goes on semantically as well, with places which are named for one reason or even perhaps not a reason. I think what's a name like Palmyra, I think, is a town name or an area name or a surname which comes up in lots of different strange accounts. I think Linda Godfrey talks about that. And certainly back to dogmen, one of the most famous dogmen attacks or dogmen sieging a house is the Siege of Palmyra. Linda Godfrey talks about it, I think, in a couple of her books. And there was one of those supernatural witness shows that looked at it fairly extensively, when a husband and a wife were sitting on their porch one night having their evening coffee, and their property, which was in Palmyra, Maine, surrounded by woods. Yeah, and all of a sudden there was this feeling, and the father had a really bad, or the husband had a really bad feeling, and wanted to take his wife in. And his wife, I don't want to say she was a shrew, but she sounds like she was a shrew, just wouldn't go with him, just resisted it. No, I don't want to go in. Why are you pulling me in? And he just had all his heckles up. He was a hunter. And then she shone the flashlight, and there were these 5 creatures that looked like they might have been wolves or something. And then they stood up bipedally, and they ran like around the house, and they spent the rest of the night trapped in their house while these things circled the house. And again, not wanting to say this woman's a shrew, but sounds very shrewish. She didn't let the husband keep any of his guns in the house. So all of his guns were in the external garage, locked in like this gun cabinet. So he couldn't get his guns. I think at one stage
didn't he make a go at it?
Yeah, he did. He did. You know the story. There you go. But I mean, that's an example of, again, Palmyra is another one of those places which is not quite as menacing sounding as Devil's Lake or Devil's Peak, but it's a name that appears, I think, and there's lots of names like that, names which always pop up. And when you read an awful lot of this type of stuff, you'll see names appear again and again and again. And it's like, why is there this attraction to names by the paranormal? I don't know.
That story sounds a lot like the Hopkinsville goblins, where they come out.
Yeah, like Hopkinsville Kelly goblins. You're right, Jen. It's very similar. Very similar to that.
That's a crazy story.
That is a crazy story.
Taking shots at goblins all night.
Yeah.
I know. That's wild. And that's, of course, we talked about Hellier later. That's obviously whether it's a real story or whether it's a hoax. I don't think the Newkirks ever really decide, but they suggest that they might have been being played to some degree with that original story from the person who said he was a doctor called David, whose house in another part of Kentucky was besieged at night by little men who sounded very much like Hopkinsville goblins.
Yeah.
So that story certainly lives on in the popular consciousness as well. Kentucky, that's another weird place.
Yeah.
Speaking of
Sure.
weird states, yeah.
Oh yeah, Pennsylvania, also strange.
Yes.
The whole country's strange. Let's be real.
Yeah, you know what? Yeah,
world.
you're right.
Yeah.
There are strange places everywhere in this country.
Yeah,
For sure. Makes you wonder.
yeah.
And if
The
you go
Midwest.
looking for the strange, you will find strange.
Mm-hmm.
Keep that in mind.
I think that's good. That's good advice, actually, Vincent. I think everybody, or too many people, look at it as a hobbyist looks at something, but there is people who've had genuine
PTSD, man. I've met people that are afraid to go outside at night. They are afraid to go fishing. They're afraid to go swimming. They're afraid, I mean, this is like more fear than a person can understand. And that's why I say, oh yeah, you think you want to go out there and see a dog man until you go out there and see a dog man.
So what's the protocol of your group when you go out, the North American Dogman Project? Do you have like a set protocol when you go out looking for something, or like?
Yeah, they are very, very, very thorough with the security, with everything. Everything's been mapped out before we go out there. Yeah, me, I'm just there to take notes and ask questions and draw pictures and take pictures. They get to do all the dangerous stuff, keep me safe.
So you're somebody with your obviously you have your finger on the pulse because of your own research and your own investigations, but also by managing and producing that range of paranormal wonderful shows on YouTube. Are there some trends over the last year or so which have really jumped out at you? Anything specific, like a change in one type of phenomena, or the prominence or the prevalence of something else? Or
Well, I will say that the Dogman thing is just opened up, exploded in people in interest and in sightings. And sometimes that can be a frustrating thing too, because you get a lot of people that want to have sightings, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Other things that seem that there are more ghost, paranormal, weird, poltergeist activity, strange, high strangeness, just strange things going on now. I really think that something is changing with the planet.
Yeah.
We're seeing these things in Chicago, these flying humanoids, and I believe those things are conjured, be it by people or something else.
do you think those current ones in the Chicago flaps are related to the famous Point Pleasant Mothman chronicled in Keel's book?
Not at all. Not at all. I don't think it's the same. I don't think it's the same kind of thing. It's a weird thing. Now the Point Pleasant deal, I don't think that was a harbinger of death or anything either. I don't think that was there to warn anybody or anything like that. I think that people were seeing that around there before, and they were seeing it around there after, but when they saw there at the same time, they made something out of nothing. That's what I think. I mean, there's plenty of books and other people's opinions that will tell you differently.
Yeah. I mean, it's certainly obviously the main through strain of Keel's Mothman prophecies is that in some capacity, those appearances of the Mothman in the lead up to the collapse of the Silver Bridge had some causal or related effect. But you're right, who can tell with any of this stuff?
I mean, I love Keel, and I'm not saying I know more than he does, but I just don't really think that these things are a bringer of death or harbingers of doom. I think these are more like conjured land sentinels, almost like ultra-terrestrial beings called forth for a purpose that is unknown to me.
Well, I think that's probably as close to the truth of it as any of us.
Yeah.
Your guess is as good as mine on that one.
Yeah.
So
People are seeing them. No, that's for sure. And why? That's anybody's guess.
Yeah, I think that's the most important, really stepping off point for anybody who's interested in this, is to recognize that something's being seen, to have an almost phenomenological approach, just to say, well, there's a phenomenon, people are reporting it, instead of jumping to an instant conclusion of what the greater meaning is. Oh, there's one.
I wanted to ask about this one.
Okay.
Okay, so in certain Native American cultures, they dress up as certain entities in their culture, and this is a representation of that. It's a Wendigo dancer.
Yeah. I didn't know if you had a story behind it from somebody seeing it, or.
I was trying to dig into the origin of a few different things, and I was just doing a study on them. I thought it was interesting enough to include.
That is interesting. I live up here in Wendigo territory.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've been looking into those pale humanoids. Now, that is another thing like the Sasquatch or the upright canine. That is everywhere. Every continent, every place has a story that is like these little, well, not little necessarily either, these pale humanoid creatures. What they are, a symbol of starvation and greed, or manifested into some sort of creature. I don't know, but I think they're seeing them.
I think I saw a picture of one of those that let me see if I can find it.
Yeah, there should be a bunch of those.
Of course, my screen just went weird.
So that's a cross-cultural phenomenon you were saying as
well.
Yeah,
the crawler, the rake. The rake is actually a creepypasta, but it's the same creature that they're talking about. The same. They'll call it a ghoul in the Middle Eastern terms, and the Wendigo or other Fleshgate, Ashman, Stick Indian. Yeah, I get a lot of reports by roads. The cryptids hang out by roads, apparently.
Yeah.
I know that again feeds into my kind of suspicion that it's something else than what it presents itself as. It's almost like it wants us to see it. All of these things almost seem to go out of their way for us to see them. It's like that's what makes me
see
think
these things.
Else going on.
They can be translucent in parts, and they can climb up cliff walls, and they can fit their body into small places. You would think that they were almost amphibian. There's a story for you. All right.
Give us this
now
one.
this was in the 90s. That one too. That's the same.
Oh, the same one.
Now this was a gentleman and his sister came back after a bonfire party, and they had a problem with some dead chickens they were finding in front of the coop, even a dead goat. Well, they come home one late night after the sister was pretty inebriated, and they parked, and their headlights hit this thing. This thing is on top of a 5-foot chicken coop, and has a chicken in its hands, and it starts to hiss at them. So he starts flashing the lights and honking, trying to wake his parents up or something to get this thing to go out. And it growled at him for a little bit longer and then ran off. A couple nights later, though, he was awoken in the middle of the night with that same being pushing its face up against its his bedroom window.
Good grief.
Yeah, growling at him. Yeah.
Thanks, Vincent. I won't be sleeping tonight now.
Right. What are these things?
Gosh, I get terrified looking at them.
We've got a lot of caves in Missouri. These things have a lot of characteristics that you would think a cave dwelling being would have, like the skin, the translucent white, almost see-through skin, and their eyes, they seem to have several eyelids. Their ability to climb. But who knows?
One night here, I was disturbed in the middle of the night by my guinea fowl I used to have going crazy. And I went out with a flashlight and a handgun. But if I'd seen those photos prior to that, I might have been taking more than a handgun out with me.
Right.
Vincent. Now,
what do you do if you get one in your sight? Are you going to shoot it?
Gosh.
I hope you've got a big gun.
Yeah. And also, I
would, because it scared the shit out of me.
I'd give it one anyway, just to see what would happen. But I mean, I'm not even sure if they're physical. I don't really.
Right.
There's story after story after story with Dogman, with Sasquatches, with Hopkinsville goblins, if you name it, people shooting at things and nothing happens. And I don't care how big a Bigfoot is. If I hit it with a 12 gauge slug, it's going to go down. So when people are shooting these things and there's no reaction, they're either missing them, but quite often they're convinced they hit them, or there's something which isn't a flesh and blood biped.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's the reality. So who knows?
Sure.
But you were a fascinating guest, Vincent. Let's get you back on and do this again sometime. It's just a great fun.
I had a lot of fun.
Yeah. No, I did too, man. And how can you let everybody know how they can watch your shows or get a hold of you or follow anything you're up to?
Well, that'd be at Beyond Explanation YouTube channel. Like, share, subscribe. Yeah, no, every Tuesday we have a Bigfoot show on Beyond Explanation. We either have the lovely Amy Boo, Wild Boo Yonder, or we have the guys at the Catskill Appalachian Research Collective from Behind Tall Trees. Mm-hmm. And on Thursdays, we've got the brilliant Jack Carey with Paranormal Planet. That is a fantastic show. And then, of course, on Fridays, we've got Ron Strickler and Arcane Radio. And we're starting more narrations of first-hand encounters, and we've got a lot of new stuff coming on the way.
That's fantastic.
That's good.
I'll keep watching as I always do. Just keep me posted of anything new that comes along, and until we see you again, mate, you make sure to keep it weird.
Absolutely. Yeah. You too.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us tonight. If you're interested in checking out more episodes, you can find us at talkingweird.com. If you haven't already, please like the show on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Talking Weird Podcast. Make sure you never miss an episode by subscribing to Talking Weird. We're available on most podcast platforms and YouTube. And if you do enjoy the show, please leave us a review. Dean and I would really appreciate it. Until then, stay safe and